Have you ever thought that a tariff decision could turn the global economy upside down? Trump's tariff policy has created a tsunami of order cancellations, pushing millions of dollars out of the market and causing key U.S. export industries to fall into crisis. From pork to soybeans to Boeing airplanes, no industry has escaped devastation. Is this the price to pay for the trade war, or an opportunity for other countries to rise to replace the U.S.? Imagine you are an American farmer, diligently raising pigs and waiting for orders from China. You think you will make a big profit, since China is one of the main markets for your product. But then, one day, you receive shocking news. China decided to destroy all 12,000 tons of pork that you have prepared. You can't believe your ears, because this is an extremely important market, and losing this large order could cause you a lot of damage. What happened? Tariff 145% that Donald Trump applied to Chinese products caused China to retaliate by cutting orders. Your main consumer market suddenly disappears in the blink of an eye. The U.S. agricultural product industry, especially pork, was seriously affected. Revenue decreased by up to 72%. It was a shock that no one could have expected. Not only pork, soybeans could not escape the same situation. Soybean farmers in the U.S. no longer see China placing orders like before. Order amount of soybeans from 72,800 tons reduced to just 800 tons, i.e. reduced to 40 times in just 1 week. For the first time in your life, you see the U.S. soybean market collapse so quickly. This not only affects you, but also thousands of other farmers in the country. Then, things got even worse. Boeing, one of the giants in the U.S. aircraft manufacturing industry, also faced this storm. China has canceled billions of dollars in aircraft orders, including returns of 2 Boeing 737 MAX that they had booked before. Think about it. What a strong blow that was to the U.S. aviation industry. A huge number is lost just because of exorbitant tariffs that Trump imposed. So, looking back, these numbers are not just economic changes, but real shocks to American industries, businesses, and workers. Tariff policy is not just a trade war, but major fluctuations that cause the entire economy to face sudden and unpredictable changes. When China decided to cancel orders from the US, it was not only a big shock to US companies, but also created a series of negative impacts on the US global supply chain. This is not simply about canceled contracts. It is causing widespread disruption, affecting countries and industries around the world. American products that are familiar on Chinese store shelves are now removed from the market. American manufacturers find themselves unable to export goods such as pork, soybeans, or aircraft to the world's largest market. This not only reduces companies' revenues, but also disrupts the stability of cross-border supply chains. Companies must look for alternative markets, but this process is not easy and is not always successful. Prices were also heavily affected. Cancellation of large orders has resulted in futures contract price reduction for agricultural and aviation products. Manufacturers in the U.S., already dependent on long-term contracts with China, are now in financial difficulties. Lower contract values leave them facing reduced profits and, in many cases, forced to cut production or find other ways to maintain business survival. At the same time, this disruption not only affects companies in the U.S., but also impacts partners and suppliers in the global supply chain. Every time one link is broken, all the remaining parts are affected, creating a domino effect that further destabilizes the global economy. There is a story that no one can expect. That is the cancellation order of China for key American products. And each industry has its own story. Surely when you hear about 12,000 tons of pork being destroyed in April 2024, you can imagine how big the consequences are. For U.S. pork producers, this is an unimaginable blow. Orders were cut so much that the pork industry's revenue fell by 72% during the same period. Along with that, the price of pork on the futures market decreased sharply, which not only caused damage to production companies, but also caused negative impacts on the entire economy. Ranchers and producers can do nothing but look at the falling numbers and hope that the situation will stabilize. The story of the soybean industry is even more bitter. Previously, China was one of the largest markets for U.S. soybeans. But when China reduced its order from 72,800 tons to just 800 tons, it was an unbelievable shock. Imagine farmers standing in front of their soybean fields, suddenly realizing that their products no longer have a place in the world's largest market. At the same time, the 145% tariff policy makes US soybeans more expensive and less competitive. China, of course, cannot continue to buy soybeans from the US when it can find cheaper supplies from Brazil or Argentina. From a time when US soybeans were king in the Chinese market, now the US has gradually lost market share, and soybean exporters can only stand by and watch opportunities slip away. But perhaps the worst story has to be the airline industry. You can easily imagine a company like Boeing getting a big contract with China, with expensive planes ready to be delivered. But then, suddenly, China canceled a multi-billion-dollar contract with Boeing, including the return of 2 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. It was a strong shock not only for Boeing, but for the entire US aviation industry. Each plane is not just a product, but also thousands of hours of work, investment, and hope of many people. China's temporary suspension of purchasing new aircraft and turning away billions of dollars in orders caused Boeing to face a serious crisis. The companies involved also suffered losses, and no one could have imagined the extent of the impact of this decision. Meanwhile, aircraft manufacturers and other industry players must find ways to manage, trying to maintain jobs and face an uncertain situation. When the trade war and tariffs began to escalate, not only the agricultural or aviation industries suffered, but also many other industries were deeply affected. Every industry has its own stories, and they all start with unexpected order cancellations. One of the heartbreaking stories that happened during the trade war was cancel order pulp. An American pulp export company suffered cancellation of orders up to 6,400 tons worth millions of dollars. Trains containing pulp were damaged and stuck at port, unable to continue shipping. This is not just the story of one company, but also the story of an entire supply chain. Cancellation of this order has resulted in complete disruption of the supply chain, causing American businesses to struggle to find ways to cope. Search for alternative markets. For an industry like pulp, where the international market plays an important role, losing such a large customer is no small loss. Not only pulp, other industries are also strongly affected. Industry equipment manufacturing, nice consumer goods, both have the same problem: supply chain disruption and cancel order. These problems not only affect production processes, but also make it difficult for companies to maintain export activities. When shipments cannot arrive on time, the transportation and export goods stalled, causing national depressions and causing layoffs and fires abroad. The loss is not small for American companies. Businesses in these industries must find every way to cope, from finding new markets to changing business strategies. But the effects that the trade war causes are undeniable. And so, not only the agricultural products or aviation industries are strongly affected, but also other manufacturing and export industries have to endure strong changes during this trade war period. Order cancellations and supply chain disruptions are gradually changing the face of the global economy. When Trump's tariffs have a strong impact on US export industries, not only do domestic businesses face difficulties, but many countries around the world also face equally serious consequences. However, in every difficulty, new opportunities emerge. The European Union, EU, is one of the regions heavily affected by US tariff policies. The EU's key export products include plane, car, and agricultural products, bag high tax rates from the US, causing huge losses to European businesses. One of the most obvious losses is the cancellation of Boeing order. Airlines in Europe, especially Ryanair, were forced to search alternatives when the price of Boeing aircraft became more expensive because of tariffs. This causes the contract with Boeing to become no longer attractive, and these airlines turn to other partners to ensure that their fleets are not disrupted. While the US is affected by tariffs, many other countries have taken the opportunity to replace supplies from the US. Countries like Brazil, Argentina, Malaysia, and India began increasing product offerings, agricultural products and plane substitutes, for America. They were quick to take advantage of the opportunity. This is to increase its market share, especially in this field, agricultural products. A typical example is Malaysia, where Malaysia Aviation Group signed a new contract with Boeing to replace canceled orders from other countries. This is a clear example of how other countries not only accept change, but also seize the opportunity to develop. thereby replacing the gaps left by the US in the international market. In the volatile context of the trade war, every country and business must find a way to adapt and take advantage of new opportunities. While American businesses face major challenges, other countries see a new opportunity to grow and develop. Market expansion, yours. This story is not just about these failures, but also these alternative opportunities and the strong transformation of the global economy. Trump's tariffs not only have immediate impacts, but also leave behind lasting impressions in the way countries and businesses operate. As global supply chains are disrupted, companies will have to change the way of working to cope. With these tariffs and disruptions, companies and countries will no longer be able to rely on a single source of supply. Restructuring the supply chain becomes a necessary step to maintain stability. Businesses will look for new sources of supply, move to other countries, and renew trade relationships so as not to be too dependent on one market. In that context, Brazil and Malaysia are emerging as alternative partners for the US in many fields, especially agricultural products and aviation. These countries can open up great opportunities for new markets, but they also need to make good use of this opportunity to build long-term and stable relationships. Looking to the future, global trade will certainly change. The nations will have to be more adaptable and flexible in bilateral trade relationships, focused not only on major partners. This helps them minimize risks from tariff policies and order cancellations. Even if there is a new opportunity for other countries to replace the US, the challenges are no less. Adjusting trade policies, maintaining a stable supply chain, and developing long-term relationships will be difficult problems, requiring creativity and flexibility. So, what has Trump done with trade wars and tariffs? It not only disrupted key US export industries, but also disrupted a global supply chain system. This change forces countries to find new partners and even change production methods. But the important question is, can countries manage and thrive in this volatile environment? The future will not be easy, but it is an opportunity to restructure, adapt, and create long-term commercial strategy. Are we flexible enough to seize the opportunities that await?